Thank you all for coming in. The Columbian is pleased to welcome candidates for representative from Washington's 3rd Congressional District. From left to right, Jaime Herrera Beutler, Lucia Worthington, David McDevitt, and Jim Moeller. Thank you all for joining us today. Let's see, I should also mention that Kathleen Arthur and Angie Marx also are running in this race. And we expected them today, but haven't seen them. I'm Greg Jane, the editorial page editor here at the paper, and I believe you met the other editorial board members. And you know Lauren Dake, who will be sitting in on this meeting, won't be asking questions here, but might want to speak with you later. And final thing is, we are videotaping this as we do all of our editorial board meetings, and we post them unedited on the web for the benefit of our readers. So we will get started. Please take just a moment to introduce yourselves, give us a little bit of background, and explain why you are running for this office. And we'll start with Jaime.
I'm Jaime Herrera Beutler, and I'm running for this office because I believe no one's going to fight harder for the people of this district than I will. I grew up here, and I value our way of life. I want to protect it and pass it on. Part of that means making sure that we have an economy that allows the next generation to be employed here. That's a constant refrain I hear. And in addition to those folks who have jobs, they need to be jobs that can support them. When I came into office, I think we were in the worst recession we'd seen in decades, and it was just getting a job was the issue. Now what I hear is jobs keeping pace with inflation, and job growth, and the opportunity to make enough, because we've seen inflation go up, we've seen the cost of living go up, fuel, food, goods, that kind of thing, but jobs haven't kept pace. So focusing on making sure that there's economic opportunity remains my number one focus.
Right, thank you. Lucia?
Okay, I'm Lucia Worthington, and I'm running as an independent, nonpartisan, in other words. I wanted to get into the race. I wasn't sure I was going to do this until last March, but I'm just tired of the gridlock in Congress. And as an educator, my biggest focus is on education, and since I teach business, on making the economy vibrant and progressive for the future. I lived in Washington for a long time, but then went abroad, worked with the military as an instructor on over 25 military bases. So I also understand some of the conditions that the military people feel. And here at Clark College, where I teach now, I have many students who are getting back into education to try to retrain themselves to become part of the economy. So as far as the district, it's a very big district. I've been to all the places in the district, all the counties. So we have a lot of beautiful places. One of the things that I've been interested in lately is the oil port, and I see now the city council has voted against it. I have been to all 6 counties that would be affected by the oil transport by rail and by sea, and this is a concern to me. First of all, it's not an economic advantage to have something like that here. I see that this area is much more of a high-tech area, and would create better jobs in this particular area. Thank you.
Real quick.
Yeah.
How long have you lived in Clark County?
7 years, yeah. I lived in Clallam County for a long time, and also up in Olympia.
Great, thank you. Dave?
My name is David McDevitt, and I'm the only veteran in the race. My career experience includes managing billion-dollar budgets and collecting smaller budgets from 400 internal organizations at a Fortune 500 company. It also includes managing software developer team of 25 people at companies subsequent to that. And I went back to law school, completed a law degree, and have a license to practice as well. So I think I bring a great deal of skills with me. In the 3rd Congressional District, being close to 10,000 square miles. We have various issues, and in every county the issues are different. Mostly economic here for sure, but also in all 7 of the counties. And some of them are related to forestry, some of them have issues related to the fishing and maritime industry, and then we have the I-5 corridor with a number of isolated communities up and down that suffer economically because their connection points are either through the rail lines or via I-5. And I have specific ideas about improving the economy, not only for low-income workers, but also for senior citizens, and as well for addressing the transportation and infrastructure problems that we have great numbers of opportunities for.
Great, thank you. And Jim?
Well, my name is Jim Moeller, and I was born and raised here. I'm running for Congress because I want to make Congress work again. Right now we have a Congress that is setting records for doing absolutely nothing, and that makes me angry. It should make you angry too. We need a Congress that takes our country's work seriously, and a Congress that's on our side, that will revitalize our economy and put people back to work. The last 2 decades, I've been elected not only to the city council but to the state legislature, and I've championed veterans, the aged, and working families. Right here in Southwest Washington, I intend to continue that work in Congress. So, thank you. No, no, it's not.
Great. Well, thank you. We'll start with, there are a lot of issues we can talk about regarding Congress, but we'll try to keep it focused on ones that relate directly to us. And so let's start with the I-5 bridge, the I-5 corridor. What can we do to get Congress involved in moving the process forward? And we'll start with David.
Well, as I mentioned, transportation and infrastructure issues are key to the conversations that I've had. I don't think the problem is the I-5 bridge specifically. I think it's the volume of traffic that we have on I-5. And so the solution for the problem is multi-pronged. I think we're ripe in the Clark County, Multnomah County region for a bi-state mass rapid transit solution that is similar to the Bay Area Rapid Transit in San Francisco Bay Area. I think we're ripe for a bypass road for freight from someplace south of Longview to someplace around Woodburn, Oregon, on the west side of Beaverton. I think the I-5 bridge does need to be replaced, and I think Congress's role is to take a significant step in funding transportation and infrastructure issues throughout the entire nation. In addition to that, the roadway and bridge repairs, I think we're ripe for significant repair, especially in the rural communities, for broadband internet. And we need to get that out there so that people, professionals, can telecommute.
Lucia?
Okay, you're focusing basically on I-5, as I heard you, and since I've been driving back and forth on I-5 up to Centralia, there are lots of ruts in the road, and it's very dangerous. So I think that should be very clearly stated in Congress. It's not just a local issue. It's a safety issue, not only for the people, but it's also a safety issue for the trucks that travel on there, and never mind motorcycles. So I think I have more of an approach to get other smaller governments involved as well, the county as well as the city governments, because it affects all of us. It's not just a federal issue. So that's the first priority, working with other counties and other government entities such as cities. The next one is, I think we need to have a strategic plan. First of all, going through Portland on I-5 is mind-boggling. We are an earthquake country. And the 205 bridge is an alternative, but I think we need to look strategically for another a way to get across the Columbia River. So strategically, I would be looking at bypassing Portland as far as heavy trucks go, because we have enough local traffic that commutes on a daily basis. I would say for the city, light rail is a possibility, but this is a county that is very diverse and open spaces. So putting the financial burden on the other counties to have light rail would be something that we should consider. But I'm for light rail as well.
Jamie?
I think Congress' responsibility here primarily is to help fund the lion's share, which is why in the last transportation reauthorization bill, I fought to make sure there was a pot of money set aside for big projects that localities can apply to. Because I don't think this is something just the locals should pay for, or just the state should pay for, because it connects Canada to Mexico. I think that's the number one responsibility of Congress. It's not our job to say this is what it has to look like. And I think that's where we fell down in the last go around, was it really came from the top, saying this is what this bridge has to look like. And the locals said it's not going to meet our needs. I'm intrigued by bypass ideas. I wouldn't oppose that at all. The challenge becomes the feds don't then pay for it because it's not the same corridor. There's a challenge on making it part of the same corridor. Otherwise, then the burden falls just to the states or the county. So it's not a bad idea per se. It's just, can we do it? And right now, I've been told we can't, because it then becomes a local project versus the I-5. So that's kind of our tie-in. And I'm open to getting, you can access other pots of money if you go for transit. I think one of the areas where people were just intransigent last time that caused us to fall down is they said it has to be light rail. If we would have done bus rapid transit and built a lane for it, we could have accessed the same money for transit and thereby increase the capacity on the bridge. And I think that would have been amenable to Clark County voters from the conversations I've had. I think it would be something that, because it's movable, it's not a fixed rail. I mean, you see right now in Washington, D.C., they're having major problems funding the subway system there. It's called the Metro, and that moves upwards of 500,000 people into the city and out a day, and it's not sustainable there. So I think a transit piece is a good piece.
You talk about fund for the feds to handle large projects. Then why has Congress been so reluctant to raise the federal gas tax for decades?
I actually think there's a number of people who support raising the gas tax. I don't. I'll tell you why I don't. Because it won't fund the project.
Where does that money come from?
What do you mean?
To fund
there's a plan I've supported that I think would be, that if you look at the projections, it could fund this in perpetuity, because this isn't the only thing that we need to fund. We need to fund the whole infrastructure, and it would be taking basically some sort of a fee off of oil and gas exploration, of energy leases. That could go into dedicated pot of money to fund transportation infrastructure. And if you look at the numbers behind that, that could fund our future needs. A gas tax just won't. The numbers just aren't there. I mean, there are certain people who support it, but I am like, why would we support that if it won't work?
What's holding that idea up?
I actually think, so when we went to vote on that a couple of years ago, I think it was the really far right in the House, because they didn't feel like the federal government had any role in transportation.
Jeez.
And so we were fighting those of us who said, wait a minute, we do pay a federal tax, and there is interstate that needs to be connected. Interstate, that's part of the role of the federal government. So a number of us were just fighting against that idea. And actually, a lot of those people have come full circle. It's amazing.
Is it possible to come forward?
I think so. I think that's one of the things, one of our challenges has been a Senate that needs to be 60 votes, Republican or Democrat. And you can't get anything through the Senate. I mean, our bills go to die there. We've passed all of our appropriations bills out of committee, and I have no hope that the Senate's going to pass them. So it'll be another omnibus. But anyway, I do think that that's an option. I've had people here locally talk to me about the idea of some sort of a national tab, and that even brings in more revenue than a gas tax. So I'm open to the ideas as long as it's going to work.
National tab.
The person who came and talked to me about it had a bunch of numbers around it. Everybody pay, I don't remember what it was, but for debate's sake, $20.
For registration?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Not something that's going to clock your vehicle miles traveled, because, right? But it's something that everybody pays. You're using the road, or the produce that you buy or the gas that you use comes from somebody who's using the road, so you pay it, and that brings in a pot of money. So there's a couple good ideas. I think for me, I spent a lot of time trying to explain to colleagues who were new to the federal government that this dedicated pot of money funds aging infrastructure that has been decrepit for long before we got here. And I think there is now more support for the idea.
Yeah.
Jim?
Well, well, I've worked across the aisle quite a bit to get agreement on the CRC, and it's an outdated and dangerous and causes traffic problems. We all know that. In Congress, though, I am very much ahead of and in favor of a light rail system being part of the CRC. I do not think that we did it from the top down. I think that it came from the engineers who said, this is the way it has to look, and that's the way it has to look. That's the way it has to be. So, but it'll be certainly smaller, and it'll be more expensive in the future. Probably less lanes necessary. But I am in favor of a light rail component. This will create minimum wage jobs in Washington and Oregon, and I think it's essential that we close the loop on the Mexico to Canada route, that we eliminate the drawbridge that's there.
Let me go down the table and ask different questions to the individual sitting there. Jim, I'll start with you.
Okay.
You probably won't have the answer on that.
Really?
I'm not thinking.
Okay.
I'm not thinking. But anyway, so you say you're running for Congress because you want to get Congress moving again.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I want to get moving again, working again.
Yeah, right. But I don't know, there's something strange going on in the neighborhood with you, because first you wanted to run for lieutenant governor. Then at the last minute you switched. And how much of this has to do with you just being, I don't know, tired and maybe burned out with the state legislature, and you're just looking for a new challenge? You know, how much of an element did the fact that you've been there, done that in the state legislature for quite a long time, did that play a role in your decision making?
Well, there is a role of being, I've been there, done that sort of thing. I'm looking for a new challenge. But I also, at the same time, there are 11 candidates for lieutenant governor. I think the lieutenant governor is probably in good hands, at least as far as candidates are concerned. But also, I was looked at by business, by labor, by other elected officials who came to me and said, why don't you take a look at 3rd Congressional District? And I did, and I found a leadership vacuum, quite honestly.
That's still pretty late in the game.
Yeah, it's very late in the game. It's mostly,
Why did these guys come to you a month earlier?
well, they did.
Oh, I see. You were just mulling.
Yeah, I was mulling that. Well, like I was mulling the lieutenant governor's race. You know about
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks. David, I mean, okay, so you're in this race, you're going against an incumbent, Republican incumbent, that's, in that 60% range, winning pretty regularly in a conservative leaning district. To be honest, you don't have a lot of name recognition. What are you doing?
Well, it's curious that you've asked. As you know, Lou, I've been working on this for over a year. I've been getting out to every single one of the counties. I've been to the Democratic Central Committee meetings in every one of the counties. I've attended events and spoken to many, many people. I've actively been working together with the Bernie campaign since October of last year and have developed a name. In fact, Lucia was just saying earlier as we were walking in the door that my name is everywhere.
She's being nice.
She's being nice. And so having worked on it for over the year, and during that year, I've evaluated the past performance, and I think it would be remiss not to recognize that during the off years, the Democrats tend not to vote. During the presidential years, when both candidates are new, they're not incumbents, more people tend to vote. And I assessed that there were good possibilities this year for this race.
So you think you got a shot?
I think I have a shot because of the presidential year, because of the $13.50 minimum wage initiative, and because of the get the big money out of politics.
Lucia, if you won, good luck.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Who would you caucus with?
Both.
No, you guys know. If you had
Well,
to pick one or the other.
No, I don't think. I mean, Bernie Sanders used to talk about political revolution. I think we're ready for political innovation. And I was actually recruited by the Republican caucus wanted to recruit me for run for office when I lived in Olympia. At the same time, I was very active in various campaigns, both Republican and Democrat. So I don't think you need to caucus with anybody specifically, but I think I can be a voice.
So you're going to be this lone wolf
Yes.
sitting in
Yes.
Congress, and you think you can get something done?
Yes,
like
I
that?
think so. I think I can rattle some cages. I think I can talk sense. I think I can be analytical, because I think...
Who are you talking to? You talking to the wall? Or?
No. I used to live in the D.C. area because I used to teach there, and I'd hang around the House of Representatives. I'd go to the Senate hearings, and I would be around, and I know pretty well how it works. So I don't think you really need to take a position. I think the people in the United States are sick and tired of it. More and more people, 44% vote independent now.
Well, I get that, but I don't know how you take a position when you're not taking a position.
When you can take a
When you're
position,
talking.
you can take a position on certain issues.
Okay.
But I think you can also be a voice, and that's really why I got in the race.
Okay.
I think you need a voice. You need a fresh voice.
Okay, thank you. Jamie, I actually expected to see you wearing one of those Make America Great Again hats and being in Cleveland.
I wouldn't miss this opportunity to be with you, Lou.
I knew that was going to be your answer. But let's assume for the sake of argument that you're being nice, like you see as being nice.
You can assume that.
Right. So.
I'm not nice.
Oh, you're the nicest. So what's really going on? And let's start with the first question.
Okay.
Do you support Donald Trump?
I haven't given him my vote yet. I've had some real challenges with how he treats women, or has in the past. I've had some real challenges with his comments about minorities. Say nothing about supporting eminent domain or single payer, right?
Do you think he's good for the Republican Party?
I think so. Let me answer the first one. I'm still going to give him the opportunity to earn my vote. I think he needs to act presidential, and I want to see some policy beef. I want to see what he actually would do as president. And so he's got a little bit of time left, and I'm hoping he utilizes it. I mean, I feel like it's a little bit of time. I guess we've got time before the elections, but
you could end up.
I could. I am not
endorsing.
at this point. No. I'm talking about my vote.
You don't think you'd ever endorse him?
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to be voting or endorsing Hillary.
Well, I know, yeah. I didn't
Right,
ask
so let's set that aside.
Yeah.
But I want him to earn my vote. I want to feel like the person who's going to be the leader of the free world, whoever it is, can do the job.
And honestly, because you're unsure at this point, is that the reason why you're not in Cleveland?
No, I mean I haven't gone to the conventions yet. Someday
Oh,
I want
you didn't
to.
go 4 years ago?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay.
I'd like to, but honestly, I've got 2 kids. I've got a job here. I like being home. I haven't been to Ohio. I'm sure it's lovely,
Mhm.
but I actually really like being here. So, and I think it's important. Oh, go ahead.
No, I just want to say, so
Yeah.
if he doesn't earn your vote, then you just won't vote?
Won't
or-
vote?
No, I would probably write in my husband, or I don't know yet. I'm really hoping he does, because ultimately I think Hillary would be bad for this country. I think it would be another 8 years of the same. And so, I'm hoping part of what Donald Trump is using this time for is to make himself fit for the job. I've seen some indications. I'm hopeful.
Let me just ask one more individual question
Yeah.
to you. Obviously, our first child has some health issues, and that has created a significant amount of necessary time that you have devoted to her. But that has resulted in you're not ending up in Congress, working for the people, voting your will. How do you respond to somebody who might say, you're not representing us enough?
Well, let me challenge the premise a little bit. You're right. I had a daughter who had a terminal diagnosis, and thank God she overcame that. And it necessitated me spending time with her at her bedside in a NICU for a couple months, which meant I was not voting in D.C. Couple thoughts there. Aside from that being the right thing to do, which is why I did it, that aside, I never quit doing this job. I didn't cast votes, although I did fly back a couple times when I felt like it was going to be a close vote or something I really need to weigh in on. But in general, in the day-to-day, I didn't cast votes, but I still did this job. We still accomplished casework. I still got legislation. I still made legislative policies, and part of that is because of my relationships in D.C. Everybody talks about how things aren't going well. I mean, I had bipartisan bills that passed as soon as I came back because we had been working on them during that time. The Forest Roads bill was signed into law. I think it was January when I got back, because during that time I utilized the relationships I had. We still were able to make tremendous progress on cases. So it's inaccurate to say I was off or it didn't work. I didn't cast votes. I did miss votes. But I continued to do the job. I did telephone town halls. I did a lot of stuff to make sure that the people of this district were served, even though I had a lot on my plate. Yeah, it's a good question.
I have a quick question. So, David, you and Jim seem like you have a lot of similarities. You're both, Democrats. And what differences do you have? What are the differences between you two?
Well, I'm personally, I'm very proud that David added his voice to this race. I think that he is, but I do have a 20-year record, or 20-plus year record of fighting for progressive values and progressive ideas. So I think the voters also know me, and they have elected me and re-elected me and re-elected me, so they can gauge me on that and make their decision on that.
Yeah,
So,
I'm talking about issues. What issues are you two different?
oh, I don't know. Where are we different?
The transportation issue.
Oh yes.
I'm firmly committed to the idea that we need mass rapid transit. I think that light rail doesn't have, it's a good solution, it's an additive piece, but it doesn't have the ability to respond to the capacity that we need to be prepared for in 10 and 20 years from now. I think we need to be thinking about transporting 250,000 people a day as a minimum target, and to get those cars off the road. If we merely replace the bridge, or we merely replace bridge and add light rail, we're going to run into this capacity problem in a quick hurry again. So I'm committed to that. I'm committed to the bypass road, and I look at the bypass road as an extension of I-5 because we're losing billions and billions of dollars of economic value having those truck drivers sitting in congestion all the way through the Portland area when they're simply going right around it. So, and we're losing billions of dollars of economic value when it comes to our residents that live over here but work in Portland, them sitting in their cars and losing time and economic value as well.
First of all, we need to gain jobs over here rather than over there, over in Portland. But still, people will probably always be behind the 8 ball on that. We'll probably always be chasing that dream. But we need to, first of all, focus in on I-5. And that's where David and I differ. He is for a corridor that takes freight off the road. I'm not for that. Quite honestly, I have no desire to pay for that myself. And that's what we'll be looking at. The First Starts program, although bus rapid transit would technically meet that idea, I am for a light rail solution right now because Portland has a light rail solution right now.
Okay.
One of the issues facing this area is a proposed oil terminal. Now, Congress isn't involved with that directly, but what would you recommend regarding oil train safety, whether the terminal is built here or not? We're still going to have oil trains going through this. So how do we approach oil train safety? Let's start with Jamie.
So there's a couple things, and you said it, regardless of whether that gets Jansley permits it, which I will be really surprised if he does. They're coming through the region, and if it's not oil, it's chlorine, it's hazardous materials. So our responsibility in Congress is to ensure safety. Tankers is part of it. I think they've been phasing in the newer tank cars. When we first had this conversation, it was, should we go to them? Are they the right ones? And we put a couple mandates in place that said, yeah, you got to get to this, and they're making progress there. I think the second issue, we all know that Bakken crude is some of the most, if not the most volatile types of oil, and they can reduce the volatility before it's shipped. I helped put legislation in place that required the federal look by DOE to what we can reduce the volatility to make things more safe. That is, right now they're conducting that study. So hopefully, I mean, that's what they do in Texas. They don't ship the most volatile stuff. They bring the volatility down. We have to do that. So we're going to hopefully get that number. I don't know when. It's happening now. I'm hopeful it will be sooner rather than later. And third, one of our firefighters shared with me the observation I'm sure we've all had. These oil trains are 100 cars long. So it's the most volatile, and it's 100 or so cars long. It's essentially like a pipe bomb. When they ship other types of hazardous material, chlorine and such, they tend to do a couple cars, and then they intersperse a different commodity in between. So at least it's not a connected pipe bomb. So why can't we encourage our friends, or then require our friends who run the industry to do something like that to make it less dangerous? And third, I think we need to make sure our firefighters and first responders have what they need, whether it's training or resources. And I've authored legislation, actually got the same legislation into an appropriations bill that required FEMA to look at oil train accidents as high priority, meaning then our firefighters and first responders can apply for this, and they're going to get high priority versus, I think it was medium or low. So they weren't likely to get money for it. Now we've put them in a good place to try and get this money, both for the equipment and for the training. There's more we can do, but that's what I've been working on.
Lucia, how should Congress approach?
Well, I am surprised that this is a local issue only. In Congress, we should have been getting in touch with all the people who represent the areas all the way to South Dakota. And so when I've been all the way to Klickitat, and then I've been all the way to the end of Pacific County. First of all, we are at risk here in the 3rd Congressional District, but we are at risk nationally. Anytime you see that train going all the way from South Dakota, first of all, 120 cars of crude oil is a high risk. When we are looking at the economic benefit, we don't have an economic benefit. If we had an oil port to be built here, we would have a gold rush of construction companies coming to this area with out-of-town construction workers and their camp followers. So, I don't understand where the port is coming from. And I don't understand why other districts haven't been involved in this, because the trains go all the way to South Dakota. They're not just impacting this. We have a scenic area all the way from Klickitat, all the way, going beyond that in this district. It's a federally protected area. There are fisheries along the tracks. Bonneville Dam is right across from the tracks. So I've talked to the port people in Skamania County, I've gone to Klickitat County, and I will be meeting with more of them. So it is not a local issue, it's a national issue, it's a federal issue. And I don't understand why Congress doesn't understand this. So as a representative, I would make sure that all the districts know about this.
Well, prior to a couple of years ago, there had been a ban on transport and export of these types of commodities. My position is to be opposed to all of those projects that have the potential to harm either the health of people, the health of our sources of food, ergo the river, or the environment. And I see the oil terminal, the oil trains, the coal trains, the project in Kalama for methanol. I see the proposed mining projects up on Mount St. Helens all as meeting conditions that should be objectionable.
Now, isn't there some scenario where a project would be beneficial and necessary for the economy?
If you sacrifice 20 jobs for the health of a couple of thousand people, then no, I don't believe that to be appropriate. I think that the health of our people is more important than the sale of goods overseas. And one of the concerns that has brought itself forward with respect to, as an example, the project in Kalama, is that the corporations involved in setting up that project are putting together shell corporation over shell corporation to avoid the potential of liability for the damages that they may cause. I believe that they see the potential for the damages, and as a consequence too, we know that the trains have problems. We know that the cars have problems. We just saw it happen in Moeller. If it was on this side of the river, we could have seen half of Skamania burnt to the ground. I think that that's a problem, and I think that we should be very, very careful about how we approach it.
So what should Congress do about it?
If it were my vote, I would reinstate the ban on fossil fuels being exported.
Sure.
Well, first of all, I don't support the oil terminal. Basically, I think it's unsafe, and I think the people of the 3rd District do not want an oil terminal. Also, regarding the safety of the cars, those were the safe cars that derailed in Moeller. Those were the safe ones. Those had been. I'm thinking that the very foam that was put on the burning cars evaporated because it was so hot. There is no way that our people can get the first responders can get the training or the equipment or the resources to deal with fires that happen from derailment. And I am appalled, and I don't know why, that our current representative, Jaime, has not introduced a moratorium going through a national scenic area. I don't know why that is.
And the fisheries,
I can speak to that.
I intend to ask her.
Well, is that you asking me?
Yes, I am.
So can I then lob back at you because I've looked at it?
No, we can't. But
So what do you then say to the oil that is then transported? So all that oil gets transported by truck on the road. How is that safer?
it's not.
So we've already there's already
Through
a
National
base
Scenic Area?
that this may not happen, right?
This may not happen.
And no one here has control over that. But regardless, those
But
hazardous
you
materials.
have
No, let me
control-
finish.
you have control.
Those hazardous materials still go through our area. So the question was, what are you going to do to make it more safe?
Chlorine.
I hear you saying putting volatile oil on the truck road on trucks and on the road is safer than sending it by rail. You know, another thing I didn't mention that I think could have helped in
I
Moeller.
did not say that. I did not say that.
You said you would put a moratorium on it. Where does it then go?
Well,
Does it go into a pipeline?
Goes to a pipeline, which actually
So you
voted
support
for,
a pipeline, a pipeline
through national
infrastructure?
parks.
So you support pipeline infrastructure?
So you support pipeline through national parks?
No, I didn't call for the moratorium.
Yeah, you do.
I didn't call for the moratorium, Jim.
I do call
That's
for
why
a
you
moratorium.
can't walk into this and say, I'm going to make this a political
So you-
issue
so
and I'm going to
you
scare
not-
people.
you
The
don't-
reality is, let me
You don't
finish.
support a moratorium because
Well, because
why?
then it all transfers onto trucks and goes on the road. How is that safer? Do you want to
Well,
drive around those trucks?
How about up to Anacortes and down?
So do you support? So Jim, you have to think logically. I mean, it's really easy. Donald Trump does this all the time. He walks in and says stuff, and people go, "Yeah," and then the rest of us are standing there going, "Where's the beef?" Jim, what you're saying doesn't have any beef to it. You either put that oil, per the question that was posed to us, it's going to go, or
Why?
a hazardous
Why does it
material
have
is
to
going to
go
go.
at all?
What is a hazardous material? Like
But why
chlorine?
does it have
Chlorine
to go?
doesn't explode.
Chlorine is a hazardous material,
Chlorine
just
doesn't
like
explode
so-
like
so-
like oil does.
So, we don't control whether it goes or not. Our control is how do we make it safer. You're telling me that taking it off a rail and putting it on the road is and maybe, I don't know, maybe there are studies, maybe it is safer. I'm just saying that doesn't necessarily pass face value with me. You know, one thing that we do on our side of the river that they should be doing on that side of the river is BNSF physically walks the train tracks. And they look for problems. That they don't inspect on that side, and it was a bolt. So that's
I think
another
they
thing.
did expect-
That's another
inspect
thing that we
on
could
that
do.
side.
But
That
there's
would
another
add to
thing.
the
May,
safety.
may I just say, there's another thing we could do. Much of this oil is actually Canadian oil. Vancouver, Canada will not have it. They've just had a huge political issue in Canada. So we're shipping it down here. Tesora came to the Vancouver Rotary and talked to us about putting it into Bellingham. Bellingham was smart enough to refuse it. You know, Bellingham is closer to Anacortes. So, you know, why are we stupid or something? You know, why do they pick on us?
So I think you're asking valid questions, but that's not something that, in running for Congress, you're going to get to say yes or no to. The governor's
Well,
going to
no. You have to
probably
battle
say
their
no.
pages too, because you have to give the facts. And Canada has said no.
They've
Canada
actually
is not
told
shipping it.
the rail that if we don't offload it, they'll take it, which tells me then we have no control over it, and it's still going to pass.
Why do you want to have control over it? It's
I want to, for safety's sake. I
No,
don't
no,
want them
no,
just
why do you
setting
want to
the
ship
rules.
it here in the
Yeah,
first place?
Jim, if they did have such a moratorium, then wouldn't it just go on trucks through the gorge, or would you
No, it
ban
wouldn't.
trucks
It would-
as well?
It'd be any oil through either barge or rail or by truck through a national scenic area. And I don't know why our representative has not introduced that into Congress.
And I think she answered that.
Yeah.
Okay, Jamie, in your campaign materials, you mentioned you would cut wasteful spending in Congress. Give me an example.
Oh my gosh. Well, on the Appropriations Committee, we've reduced operating budgets. Let's start with Financial Services and Government Operations, which is the IRS. You know, they plussed up a couple of years ago, and I think we've reduced what we felt like was wasteful spending down to 2006 levels. So right now, the IRS returns about upwards $10 to $20 billion in fraudulent returns to people, dead people who shouldn't get them. That's a lot of money. That's a B. And we felt like clearly they're not spending time on what we need them to spend time on. And so we've reduced their operating budget
And no, but given examples like that, why is the deficit still so high?
Because that's a great question.
Growing.
There's two types of spending. There's appropriations bills that happen every year, and then there's what they call mandatory spending that happens whether I vote on it or not.
Right.
And I've supported proposals to strengthen and to put our trust funds on firm ground, because right now they're not. If we do nothing because of the growth in those programs, for a myriad of reasons, technology, people living longer, so on and so forth. But if we don't adjust it now for people my age and younger, they will go bankrupt. And that's where you're seeing a lot of the explosive growth. That's when you talk about the debt. We've really been reining it. I think we've reined the deficit in to 2/3 of what it was when I got into office. There's still more room, but that's a pretty good number in 5 years. But the debt is still what's crushing us, and it impacts jobs now and in the future, which is why I've supported tough proposals. Not tough on seniors, but tough politically, because it's more important to me to get this done for our future than to cling to this job.
To help
Yeah.
with that, should we trim military spending?
Absolutely. But that's also part of the appropriations process,
Sure.
and we have done that. And if you look at my record, I've bucked my party and voted more than once to take drastic reductions there where I felt there was waste and abuse. I mean, talk to any service member, and I'm sure you could speak to this. I'm not talking about taking out of our warriors, but the Pentagon budget is bloated, and there are contractors who make money that they shouldn't necessarily be making. And I have voted more than once to cut that money and to rein that back. But again, that doesn't hit the big picture problem. That's part of the appropriations process that we've reduced.
Let me ask a question about Social Security and start with Jim. Right now, Congress regularly raises the Social Security fund to pay our stuff.
It was made to be as an insurance program, not as an investment program.
Right.
Right.
But it is being rated from the contributions that citizens put into it, primarily for a retirement fund for those people when they stop working. So I see two things with Social Security, and I'll be asking this question to everybody. One is whether or not we should continue to be borrowing from Social Security, and two, whether or not we drifted away from the main purpose of Social Security, which is a retirement fund. So could you answer both of those? Should we stop the rate of the Social Security funds to help pay everything?
Other things were meant to be paid for out of Social Security. That's the nature of insurance fund. But the extent that it is that we haven't risen the 1%, the wealthy corporate tax, the individual tax on that, I don't know. I can't really answer that. But Social Security was set up originally that it would pay for other things.
Right, but I mean, you hear all the stories that Social Security will be bankrupt in 5 years or 6 years
Raise the cap.
if we don't fix it.
Raise the cap.
Okay, so as opposed to pulling money out of it, as you're saying, I guess you're saying that was the plan all along.
It was.
But you would agree that they're abusing it?
No.
Okay. So the answer is to raise the capital. Your view on those two points?
And expand Social Security so that it covers everybody. Quite honestly,
You mean non-workers?
we have to go from healthcare of the aged to a single payer system. So although Obamacare is a very good start, it doesn't go on.
There has been information that has been inaccurate and presented to the American people for the last 20 to 30 years, starting with the Heritage Foundation and the Cato Institute, telling us that the Social Security Fund was going to go broke. It hasn't shown itself to be true. Social Security was set up with 3 revenue sources: the contributions from one's W-2, the interest from the loans it makes to the federal government, and the taxes that are collected on benefits above and beyond and it's the equalizer, if you will, where benefits are received by people that also make significantly more money doing other ventures as well, and so it becomes taxable. That goes back into it. Social Security by law is only allowed to lend its funds to the federal government. Who else can we trust but the federal government to pay back those funds? We have it right on the dollar bill about how that works. And so I think that we need to do two things. We need to increase the cap on which Social Security is applied in determining what the premium amount is. I think we need to change the cost of living factor to one that's more appropriate to the elderly, because it is more sensitive to medical care cost increases. I know more about Social Security because it's a point of interest for me. My mother is 84 years old. She lives in my home rent-free because Social Security is not enough. The funds that women receive from Social Security are generally significantly less than that of men. And so there's a discriminatory factor. But the purpose for Social Security is to keep our senior citizens from falling below the threshold of survivability. Prior to Social Security, we used to have farms where we'd send the old folks out to die. We don't need to do that anymore. We have a better way. Social Security is a wage insurance program that equalizes and helps everyone, and we need to bolster it and improve it.
Could you repeat the question?
Well, it's a two-part question.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, and the politically correct way of saying it is Social Security loans money to the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, they are raiding the Social Security system to take money. Would you stop that? Would you stop, by law or not, would you stop the federal government from going to the Social Security funds and taking loans from the Social Security funds?
Well, the first thing I would do is see where the rate is happening, if it is in fact happening.
No, it's
So, yeah, but,
Okay,
you know,
hold on.
where is it going? Where is it going,
you
and
call it
who's
rate?
receiving it?
Right.
So is it going to Medicaid? And so, you know, you really want to see if the rate is in fact, who is rating it for what?
It's going to everything.
Okay, then that would have
Federal
to stop.
government needs money.
Right, okay.
So do you like that idea or don't you like that idea?
I don't like that.
So you don't like the idea of the loan or the raid, or you? What don't you like?
I don't like the fact that you're putting at risk monies that are designated
Oh, so you don't
for
like-
people on,
you don't
you
like
know,
the loan.
yeah, right, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So the next thing is Social Security, in most people's minds, was primarily set up to help the elderly, to help them be able to live once they are retired from work. That was the general premise of Social Security. But now there are many other things that Social Security pays for. Should we look at
Right, we should
whether
look
or
at that.
not should we look at these other things?
Yes, we should.
Okay,
Yes.
Jen?
So, yeah, I think we should stop the raid. And part of the way we stop that raid on Social Security is by not overspending in other areas. You're exactly right. The federal government is a beast that will consume everything it can. I've seen it. It is so difficult to cut money from a program that's growing. And unfortunately, people have looked at Social Security as a fund, as a money tree. And it shouldn't be, because it's exactly right. If someone paid into that growing up and expecting that to be there, it should be there. It's their money. It should be a trust fund in a lockbox. We should not be using that for other things. And that was the original intent. It has now grown to where the government either uses Medicare right now is one of the biggest threats to Social Security, period. It could go bankrupt in as little as a decade because Medicare is growing exponentially. in large part because, we pay in about $115,000 or so per couple into Medicare. You draw between $300,000 and $400,000 worth of benefit, and that's for many reasons. But that's a real problem. Like, if we're going to protect it, we need to address that. And the same is true with Social Security. Up to 5 people can draw on one person's account, meaning one person who worked and paid into an account. Up to 5 people who never paid in, right? And maybe there are good reasons, maybe there are not. I'm not here to say that over the years there weren't good reasons or good intentions behind doing that, but we then have to recognize, what are we going to do to fix this and protect really that what seniors, the investments that they made into Social Security, so it's there for them. And I would say my primary focus has been reducing spending, and within Medicare particularly making sure that it's stable,
So
which means we
making
have
it
to
a
address
voucher
it.
system? Making it a voucher system?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
We don't have to do that. We just need to stop rating it.
So then
Absolutely not. And I'm glad you said that. I don't support changing Social Security to a
A
voucher system.
related question somewhat is, given that you talk about we need to cut spending, or should the federal government raise revenue? Would you favor increasing taxes on the wealthy?
Well, not right now. I don't think so, no. Because
Okay.
we don't, and let me speak to that. Because what it's being painted as is the wealthy have and the rest don't. People pay, people who are well beyond what I'll ever make, pay a lot of money into our tax system. And what I've seen, and even, so, and I thought this was funny, I don't think seniors should be paying taxes on their Social Security. But I guess that's what separates me from the gentleman at the end. I don't think we should be requiring them to pay off their Social Security either. We don't need more tax dollars. I've seen the budget. I've seen the waste. It makes me nauseous, which is why I spend so much time trying to pare that down. Once
So
we
there's
get that
not
in
enough-
order, and if people to say we need more money to spend, let's have a national discussion. But we're nowhere near that. We're just nowhere near having our financial house in order. And that's because some people think we should be spending it. I mean, it's a difference of opinion.
Well, but it seems like somebody could always say, oh, there's more waste that needs to be cut. And you can do that in perpetuity.
Mm-hmm.
At what point do we actually address the problem instead of
Well,
just...
part of this is you have to have a political willingness to touch the third rail issues, whether you keep your job or not. I believe enough in making sure that people like my grandma don't get kicked out onto the street after they've worked and saved their whole life, and they expect that Social Security, they expect that Medicare to be there, and to have it break on them to me is unacceptable. So I'm willing to go in and say, let's change it. Let's change it for people who are my age, who have time to plan, right? It can still be there. I'm still going to pay in, but it needs to be altered to fit today's reality because of technology, because of longer lifespan, because we're doing better as a nation, because we're addressing more things that were never addressed health-wise. Those are good problems to have.
Well, but isn't it also because the top marginal tax rate is 38%? When Reagan took office, it was 70%. When Eisenhower was in office, it was 91%.
Well, I would argue, and this, you can look at Bush's presidency and how much he added to the debt at that time. We have a pretty high debt right now. And actually, this current administration, Obama, has surpassed that. I think he surpassed that in his first 4 years. Actually, I think he surpassed all previous presidents before him in his first 4 years. So I don't think we have a problem with not enough money coming in. I really don't. We have enough problem. Well, I believe our problem is we don't have enough taxpayers, which comes to jobs. My opponent at the end of the table said, we're always going to be behind the 8 ball on jobs. We're always going to be chasing the dream. I don't think that angers me, because we are no less of an area than any other area, Portland or otherwise. I actually think we have we have more to offer. We have better human resources. We have freight. If you look at our corridor, we're great for manufacturing and distribution. We've got this amazing waterway for maritime jobs, and I've worked on some of those issues. I mean, we're the gateway to the Northwest. We're connecting Canada to Mexico. I think we have a lot to offer, and we don't have to be behind the 8 ball. But it's going to take people who believe in actual job growth, not just government spending and government handouts.
We will
Lucia,
always
should
be
we-
behind the job.
should we increase income tax?
I believe in a progressive income tax, but also we should look at tax loopholes.
I mean, for individual or corporate?
Corporate, people don't understand what corporate is. People who have pension funds own corporations. So the average person is actually a corporate shareholder. So, when we're looking at corporate taxation, that's going to affect everyone because in your pension fund you have corporations. So, that's another issue. But I think progressive tax for individuals, we need to look at that. And we need to look at tax loopholes. But the whole corporation thing is like, give me 2 hours. We can talk about that.
Oh, we don't have that. David?
I'm in full agreement with the idea of progressive tax schedules. When I was growing up, I used to think of paying taxes as a privilege and a responsibility that went along with the idea that every time I went up in a different marginal tax rate, that I was making more money and it felt good to be contributing to the success of our country. I wouldn't be opposed to going back to the Eisenhower schedule. I think that there are a number of billionaires and millionaires out there that are actively speaking out and saying, we want to pay more taxes, please figure out a way for us to do that. And I think there are significant low-income workers that would benefit greatly from it. And all these low-income workers that we have today, they don't, whatever age they happen to be, if they're a low-wage worker for the rest of their lives, they don't have enough time to plan. They're worried about getting enough food on the table just for today. And that's problematic.
And I agree. I don't want people to stay in low-wage jobs. I want to see job opportunities grow because you can't sustain a family on a low wage, which means you can talk about just arbitrarily raising their wage, or you could talk about giving them opportunities to advance in their careers and see careers and job growth happen here.
And Jim, individual income tax?
Yes.
What would you advocate for the top marginal?
I would go for the top 1% of paying their fair share. Again,
What's the fair share?
Eisenhower's rate of return. And quite honestly, I think right now, although my opponent would disagree with me, I think right now we need to institute that right now because we need money. We need revenue.
Another brief comment on the component of taxation. 20 years ago, corporate taxes were significantly greater, and they picked up about 33% of the total budget of the country, and today it's significantly lower, maybe less than 10%. And there are corporations that are hiding their profitability offshore, not paying any taxes at all, to include General Electric, to include Apple Computer, and many, many others. And I think that we need to address that problem in a serious way as well.
I have one more quick question for David. Jim said that he was very happy that you're in the race. Are you very happy that he's in the race?
I am. And let me explain this. Jim is a gentleman. Jim and I have been friends for over a year. We're friends now, and we're going to be friends 10 years from now. And we're going to look back at this experience as two guys applying for the same job.
Okay, so when you heard...
I'm okay with it.
When you heard that Jim was getting in a race, you said, great.
No, I said, Jim, you just gave the right wing a red flag, and they started donating to Jaime like crazy. She's done very well this last 3 months.
He makes them nervous, I'm not going to lie.
So that's your definition that you're happy that he's in the race?
I am, because we're both adding to the conversation, and it's very important that we do that.
You don't think he screwed up your chances?
No, I don't.
Okay, we'll move on. Give us your final pitch to why voters should support you, and mention any notable endorsements, if you like. And we'll start with Jaime.
My final pitch is no one's going to work harder for the people of Southwest Washington than I will. I love this area. Despite the challenges that we face, and they are many, I actually truly believe in the people of this region, and I think they have unlimited potential. I think that's one of the reasons it's important that the federal representative from this region looks to help grow jobs. First and foremost, that's going to alleviate the pressure on the budgets. It's going to give people a sense of ownership over their own destiny. Whether you're a young person or an old person, you need the opportunity to provide for your family and be master of your own destiny. And that's why a lot of my work on the Appropriations Committee has geared that way, or even the bills I've had signed into law, whether it has to do with fishing, ground fisheries, and the 100,000+ jobs that I did a bill with Senator Cantwell that supports about 150,000 jobs in our area. I've done work with regard to veterans and making sure they get access to care so they can stay here. They shouldn't have the longest wait times in the country to get care. They should be able to live here and retire here and still get the care they need. It's one of the reasons even my personal experience, we talked about a little bit. I think it's a good thing that I've been through what I've been through personally, because older men in Congress are a dime a dozen. I think what really helps right now, I think there's about 10 of us maybe who've ever given birth while in Congress, but I now know a lot more about what it means to work and raise a family and care for children, and I think that perspective needs to be at the table making policy. 53% of the voters are women, and they deserve someone who understands the shoes that they walk in. And I think it's good for my party. I think it brings a perspective that's important, and I think that's one of the reasons people here have sent me back to Congress, and I don't take it for granted. I ask folks in this region for their vote again and for their support like it's the first time, and I hope they send me.
Thank you. Lucille?
Regardless of what happens, I'm in this race to stay. I'm already planning 2018. So because I'm finding that the 3rd Congressional District is really a truly amazing, sorry about that word, amazing word, district, having visited and talked to the people. But I think it's also really important to get local governments involved in the 3rd Congressional District at all different levels. And so I would be here as a voice. But also, as you probably noticed, I can get a little agitated when I see that things are not going to the old normal is not the way to go. We need to go to the future, and so I would represent the district all across both parties and all the independents as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think the thing that I bring to the party is that I'm a veteran and that I have career background that completely supports my ability to function well in a congressional setting. Over the last 10 months, I've forged relationships in every single one of the counties and in the local county as well. And I believe that we all need to work up and down the chain of political organizations, from Congress to the state House and Senate to our local county and commissioners, and to even our city here in Vancouver, to accomplish the big goals that we should be focusing on. My goal, my purpose, the whole motivation behind my being in this race is to help as many people as I possibly can help. And that's my commitment.
Thank you, Jim.
I want a Congress that works for you. I'd like a Congress that's on your side. I will be a congressman that actually looks for your input rather than a coffee clutch or something that you're invited to. The stakes couldn't be higher right now, and we are without representation in Washington, D.C. I disagree with my opponent at the very end of the table, stating that there are millions of women across the country who deal with work and family at all the time, and I think that saying that you are unique amongst Congress is elitist and doesn't have anything to do with the job. So I want to get Congress working again. That's what I want to do.
Right?
What about a few endorsements really quick?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Thank you.
I have not been racking up endorsements.
Okay.
I have endorsements, mostly my students, and across the the district. I'm getting more and more. So nothing famous at this point.
Well,
Yes.
my most notable endorsement was in January from Jim.
Yes. Just
And then I guess,
But he hasn't
and
endorsed
from,
me.
and from there,
It's a
I
student's
would
are
say
not-
that I
it's a
have
notable
400
endorsement.
individuals that have endorsed me. I've been
It's a
endorsed
notable
by the,
endorsement.
both the Cowlitz and the Clark County Democratic Women. I've been endorsed by 3 of the county Democratic Central Committees, and several of the members of the leadership teams in that regard as well.
Jim, are you still endorsing him?
Yes, I am. I'll never repeal my endorsement of somebody.
You gonna vote for him?
No.
I just wanted to, Jamie just let me know, students are notable, and she's right about that. I mean, I did not mean to say that
No,
they
you
were
weren't.
not
I was
notable.
just saying, be proud of
But
that.
yeah, they're very
Yeah.
proud. I mean, I love my
Jim, maybe you
students.
have any you want to mention?
No,
They
you can
go
go to
to
my
work
Yeah,
website.
for sure. Yeah.
Great, well, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
It's been absolutely,
They'll work hard for you.
absolutely a pleasure.
An
Now-
old
And
Should
as
we
I
have-
mentioned earlier, I did bring treats. I do have ice creams.
Yeah,
If anybody
guys.
would like one, you're welcome to. They're Klondike bars.